Hey, I'm T.A. Charlie, and welcome to the Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search channels for the Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it, you can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page, that's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener-sponsored. If you are interested in advertising your business on the show, please email us. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value-for-value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who have and will support this show.
Good morning. Welcome to the Road to Concord. This is Thursday, February 19th, 2026. I'm your host, Joe Bakanovic. Before we get going today, we will be back in our book, The Bible Amongst the Myths. Today we start chapter 3, which is about continuity. This is the real reason I wanted to do this study. This is where we're going to get into philosophy, worldviews. It's not so much about scripture. It is, but it isn't. It's an apologetics course, but we're going to be looking at something else. But real quick, before we get going, I have decided that I will be doing that extra show on the calendar, the biblical calendar. This is for those who are trying to follow the feasts. And then I'm thinking, Charlie, I might actually have to do that show entirely in character as Jar Jar Binks. Because the Misa the only one that can grab at the third rail and survive, y'all. Okay,
Yeah, that would be
you can entirely nuke Jar Jar Binks and he would live.
We might actually be able to go viral on that one. Yeah, I think you should do that.
If it weren't for the fact that it would strike me as blasphemous, yes, ma'am.
Did you just call Jar Jar a cockroach?
Yes. So, but anyhow, for those who are interested, real quick before we get going, there's this big argument in it's within Judaism and the Hebrew roots movement and Messianic community. How do you set the calendar in the first of the year? You know, when is the first day of Abib, the first of the month, the first month? Oh God! And then it's going to also connect to, are you counting the new moon by the sliver or the conjunction? And well, me being stupid, I looked at the Bible and I said, what'd the Bible tell me? And I said, well, that was pretty simple. It's right there in the scriptures. And then I said, what's the history here? What's Yahweh's people always done? And I was able to research that. And I'm like, okay, well, I see where that entered into the picture and I see how and why. And then I looked at some other things in history since the diaspora, you know, where they're kicked out of the land ever since 70 AD or 135 AD or whatever. I looked at some other things and I'm like, well, okay, now that makes sense. And all three point to the same conclusion. So why is this such a problem for everybody? Well, we're going to be dealing with that here sometime between now and next Shabbat. Not this one coming in 2 days, but 9 days from now. So, and trust me, if you want to see some fun, tune in on our service that day to see me give the sermon and watch everybody throw rotten fruit at me. Because I guarantee you they will. All right. PDF of our book, chapter 3. This book is by John N. Oswalt, Bible Amongst the Myths. This is when it starts to get good. Continuity, the basis of mythical thinking. He says, I concluded the preceding chapter with the statement that whatever the Bible is, it is not myth. I agree with him. That's whether you're a believer or not. It doesn't fit any operational definition of mythology. He says, that is to say, I have concluded that the similarities between the Bible and the rest of the literatures of the ancient Near East are superficial, while the differences are essential. Now, remember, I've tried to teach you what essential means. That's the same thing as necessarily. The differences, what makes the Bible in its essence is so different from these other literature stories from the ancient Near East. What makes them and what makes the Bible, that's essential. It's essential character. So they're necessarily different. He continues, I led up to the statement that through an analysis of various definitions for myth, concluding with those I have called phenomenological, because they seek to define the phenomenon through a study of its distinctive characteristics rather than through evaluation. In this chapter, I want to continue that process of analyzing the thought of world of myth, the thought world of the myth, for it is not ultimately the fabulous details found in many myths that mark a piece of literature as myth. When all is said and done, it is a particular way of looking at reality. Come back to that in a minute. First, we will look at the general characteristics of this way of thinking about reality, and then we will look at the common features that this kind of thinking gives rise to in the literature. Now, this is a Bible-based biblical worldview show. I'm not going to run from that. So what this is saying is, are you a born-again, spiritually minded individual, or are you still a fallen, carnal, materialistic way of, individual? What is your worldview? Do you see the spiritual world and the material world, or do you see only the material world? That's what Oswald's really getting at here. He's not using that language, but that's what he's getting at. Are you unregenerative, not born again? Are you still part of the non-believing world, or have you been born again? And I mean really born again, of spirit, not, oh, wow, I'm enlightened now. I understand logic and reason, and man is his own God and cool. No. That's not born again. That's just a higher state of carnal enlightenment. That's the Hindus in Buddha and stuff like that. That's not what we're talking about. So this is what Oswald's getting at. And hopefully, since I've set the stage for this, you'll see what I'm looking at as we continue to go through the show. Continuing, at the outset, it must be emphasized that when we talk about the common worldview of myth, we are not talking about a quaint, outgrown idea without relevance to the present. Myth is not the thought of primitives who cannot think of reality in abstract terms. He's going to say this again. Myth is not the thought of primitives who cannot think of reality in abstract terms. It is simply a way of thinking about reality different from the one that has shaped Western thought. That's because the Bible has shaped Western thought. Nor is this kind of thinking impossible for quote-unquote enlightened thinkers. In fact, as I will show in a later chapter, this understanding of reality is increasingly common in the modern technological world. We dress it differently, but beneath the new clothes, it is the same body as that which has existed for thousands of years. This means that the conflict between it and the biblical worldview is as inescapable and urgent today as it has ever been, meaning you have not advanced past the ancients. There are only two worldviews in this case. The Hellenistic or Hegelian dialectic, you have to think of things as either or. Well, in this case, that's true. In this case, it's true. You're either transcendent or continuous thinking. And that's because there are only two options. There are no third options. There's no little bit of both. That don't work. That's like trying to mix the holy with the profane. What ends up happening is you make the holy profane. It's no longer holy and it disappears. Continuity as the ruling concept in myth. As the previous chapter maintained, the ruling idea in the worldview that gives myth its distinctive character is continuity, the concept or idea of continuity. This is the idea that all things that exist are part of each other. Thus, there are no fundamental distinctions between the three realms: humanity, nature, and the divine. The cosmos looks like this to them, and you can see this picture here. Humanity is deity, deity is nature, nature is humanity, humanity is nature, nature is deity, deity is humanity. They're all made up of the same basic essence. Now, let's stop here for a minute. This is time where we got to get this in our head. This is Buddhist thinking. This is Hindu thinking. This is very Asian, a very Asian way of thinking. It's also what we would call primitive peoples, but I don't mean primitive as in they're stupid. I mean primitive in that they see no need to create advanced technologies and cities and stuff. But yet they can be just as sophisticated in their thinking and understanding. So think Aboriginals, Native Americans, Mayans. Well, heck, they weren't actually primitive in the way we think of it. They did build major cities and had technology and things. But they all think in terms of continuity. The great cycles, and the earth is alive, and it is God and Mother Nature. Mother Nature is a euphemism, idiom, figure of speech that comes from continuity thinking. You know, nature is God, God is nature. The Force in Star Wars, that's continuity thinking. It all comes down to the idea that the same basic essence that made the spirit realm makes the physical material realm. They're really no different. This is the primordial ocean creates everything, or the quantum flux field before the Big Bang creates everything. In other words, you can explain everything in the world through science, or in this case, magic, or both. To somebody in the continuity thinking, science is magic, magic is science. What? Yeah, just hold on. Oswald's going to explain this to us. But this is very important for us to understand. It's crucial for us to understand. This is everything. This is the whole purpose of this book study. He continues. Everything that exists is within the circle, and everything in the circle is coexistent with everything else in it. This is why the lines between the three segments are dotted. There is a community of essence among the various elements, and each segment partakes of the other two. So gods are humans in natural forces. Nature is divine, and divinity has human-like characteristics. Humanity is divine, is one with nature. There is no distinction in nature among the three, only one in its roles. So they're all the same thing, they're serving different roles. So nature runs nature, man runs man, the gods run the gods, but they're all one creation. This is modern quantum theory of how we're all just in a matrix, or how we're all just some sort of computer program or data splattered on the inside of a black hole. That's all continuity thinking. Okay, that's all mythological thinking. And the Bible would call it pagan. And I am now going to define paganism as that which is of the continuity thinking worldview. If you have a continuous worldview, you're pagan. Period. Straight up. That's the definition of pagan in my world from now on, because it works. Oswald continues. This idea has a number of far-reaching implications. For instance, it means that things that look the same or sound the same are the same. Now, that's a fallacy in regular logic, not to the continuous thinker. Oswald says, so, since the idol is like Baal, it is Baal. So if I make a bull, that's the bull. The bull is the god is the bull. What is done to the idol is done to Baal. But Baal is also like the storm. He is potent. He is life-giving. He is impetus. He is destructive. Therefore, he is the storm. Thus, what is done to Baal is done to the storm. And what is done to the storm is done to Baal. In this way, assuming that no barriers have been erected between the realms by destructive forces, it is possible to exert a measure of control over the divine in nature. But perhaps equally important, this understanding also means that humans can participate in nature and in the divine. This is that, to me, irrational assumption that we can somehow or another speak things into existence or ignore the laws of nature without consequence. In other words, we think we can become gods of our own right. That's continuous thinking, and that's what causes this. The thing I want you to do for me here as we read this chapter, consider whether or not this explains anything that you are seeing in our world today. And I don't mean left, right. I mean in people groups. Because you have people on the right that are accepting that a man can become a woman and a woman can become a man. Well, why would people actually honestly believe that's possible? Because they have a continuous pagan worldview. So if they say they are now a man or they are now a woman, to them, it's true. It's happened. To you and I, if you actually have a transcendent worldview, you know that's all bull. But they actually believe this. And they'll go into a conniption fit if you disagree with their reality. That's because they believe it. How could you possibly believe some absurdity like that? Well, that's because they're part God. They are nature. So if they want to change their nature, it got changed. Or if they want to speak themselves into existence, it happens. This is that mindset. And you're going to find it on the right and the left. Because left and right politics in this world have nothing to do with whether or not you are transcendent or continuous worldview thinker. Okay. Now, if you're a transcendent view thinker and you're on the left, I don't understand what's wrong with you. I would question whether or not you're truly transcendent. But I can see why we'll find both on the right, because the right hasn't been totally conquered yet like the left has. So I want you to consider, this is why we're doing this book study. This is the chapter, man. This is, if we didn't do anything else, this is the chapter. But you need to see where he goes with it later. And you need to see the second half of this book when he talks about what this means for history. But I want you to be thinking, how does this connect? Does it help you explain? Does it make sense out of what we're seeing? And then if it does, I hope and pray it causes you to have more compassion for these people. Not necessarily agree with them. You don't have to accept their depravity and their insanity, but have compassion for them because they're blind. They do not and cannot see reality the way we do. They're blind. And the reason they're blind is they absolutely, positively refuse to surrender and acknowledge the truth. Surrender to capital T, truth. And Oswald's going to address that for us here in just a little bit. He continues. The idea of continuity also means that there is no distinction between symbol and reality. The symbol is the reality. To be sure, the visible world is only a reflection of the invisible divine world, but as its reflection, it is identical with it. A popular term for this idea is pantheism. The divine is everything, and everything is the divine. That's the force, folks. That's the force. He says, Hinduism is perhaps the most developed expression of this thought. Perhaps a slightly more accurate term for this way of thinking about reality, especially as it appears in the ancient Near East and most other cultures, is panentheism. Everything is within the divine. The fundamental point, however, is that all things that exist are physically and spiritually part of one another. This is the single most important aspect of the way of thinking that characterizes myth. This is have any of you run into the Church of Universalism or the Universalist movement, where all things get to heaven or all things are God? And that's what this is. It's neo-paganism. It's pantheism. So he says, origins and implications of continuity. Where does such an idea come from? We receive a clue in the observation that myths are tied to the status quo. They have two chief concerns: explaining why things are as they are now and maintaining things as they are now. Those concerns spring directly out of human terror of chaos. Let's stop right there for a minute. Okay. This is one of the places where somebody who's not used to thinking nimbly, and I'm trying not to be, I don't want to inadvertently insult anybody. That's not the intention. Okay. This isn't personal to anybody. But if you're not used to thinking on the fly and being open-minded to different ideas, and being able to see how two things can coexist at the same time and be the same and different at the same time. And I'm not talking about continuity thinking here. This is literally a transcendent way of thinking. You're going to miss what I'm seeing here. I've just asked you to try and look at this and see how what he's telling us explains what we see in our world today. Say, well, okay, he's talking about how continuity thinkers, well, they're conservatives. They want to keep things the way they are. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, Joe, that's not the left. The left wants to change things. No, that's the lie. That's the lie. When the left gets in power, Charlie, pop on here for a minute with me. See if you can help me do this. I'm trying to be as gentle as I can. When the left gets, look at Mondami in New York. He's already backpedaling on his promises. He's raising taxes, which is what's always been done. He's not giving to the people he promised, but he's giving to his friends in his cohort. In other words, he just replaced the people he claimed he was going to replace. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm trying to get at here with this?
Yeah.
Nothing changes with the left. It's the promise of change. That's the bait and switch.
We will fundamentally transform the United States of America.
And all he really did was make himself the rich and powerful and displace whoever was there before.
Make America great again.
And all he does is displace the guy before him and takes the place of the people he was complaining about.
Two wings, same bird. Chirp, chirp.
All right. Yes, exactly. Two wings, same bird. So is this making sense for you, Charlie?
Oh, yeah. Because it's the same thing. It's the continuous mindset. It's the same thing, maybe from a different angle a little bit, but it's
a different flavor of ice cream.
Different flavor of ice cream, like you said.
And this is why I've never been able to find a better illustration. It's still ice cream. Mm-hmm. I can promise you, hey, this is brand new. This is different. This is better than Ben and Jerry's, but it's not ice cream. It's somebody entirely different. Here, give this a try. And you bite into it, and it's a really cool flavor you've never tasted before. And it's awesome and it's yummy, but your mouth says it's cold, it's creamy, and it's got the texture and same consistencies, and it's like a cat. I don't know what a cat is, but I know it when I see it. This is ice cream, Joe. No, it can't be. It's totally different. How's it different? Well, because I said it is. Well, Joe, that doesn't make it so.
It's got sprinkles on it, Joe.
And nuts and gummy bears, and it's a totally different flavor you've never tasted. See,
you can mix in anything you want.
Hey, Joe, why is it melting? And why did you make it with milk and ice and churn? You know.
Oh, but this one is a gelato. It doesn't. They don't use milk to make it, but it's still cold and sweet and
it's still ice cream. William Holt says this is why there's absolutely no conceivable way we can vote our way out of this mess. Exactly. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. And I don't know, Water Jug, I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing here with this, but you are absolutely correct with your conclusion. And this is why we can't vote ourselves out of this.
Because Mondami is a perfect example of this. We can't vote ourselves out of it because it's human nature, I guess, to be of this continuous mindset. And we get locked into this. So we believe these people, even though they lie to us every time. And we do
and we know they're lying
over and over and over again and get the same result. And we just...
And we know they're lying. The only thing we're changing is the color of the jersey on the dictator.
Yes.
Is it red or blue today?
Yep.
That's it. So when he says that continuous, thinking wants to preserve, do not make the mistake of thinking that, well, the left wants to change things. They're Don't make the mistake of thinking they actually want to change anything.
Oh, Jimmy.
Don't bring that one in here.
I'm not going to bring that on the screen. But if you're in the comments,
he's up there in the balcony with Aaron, and they're sniping at us. All right, let's get back to what Oswald was telling us. These concerns spring directly out of the human terror of chaos. Humanity is afraid of chaos. We'll do anything to avoid it. And Oswald says, we are afraid of chaos because it also destroys our security. And security is perhaps the greatest of all human longings. If we are to gain the security we so desperately want, the first order of the day is some sense of intellectual order. If we can explain why things are as they are, Then we have the sense of intellectual order. And we also have the feeling that we know how to relate to things explained. This is why pagan thinking, and I'm not being continuous thinking. Okay, this is why continuous thinking is more comfortable, because any explanation you make works. You can come up with any explanation that makes you happy works. But the biblical perspective, the transcendent, is there's some things you ain't going to understand, boys and girls, and you're just going to have to take it on faith. What? Well, his ways are not ours. Ours are not his. He's transcendent. He's outside this universe. The laws don't apply to him. There's certain things he's doing, how he's doing them, why he's doing them. You're just never going to know. Well, if you're a continuous thinker, that's, oh my God, that's chaos. You can't have that. Think of an OCD person. And I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying, think of somebody who's got a real bad Monk, the character of Monk. He's got to have everything a certain way. What if somebody came into his house and said, hey, Monk, from now on, you're going to be transcendent, and there are going to be things in your house that just randomly move, and you're just going to have to learn to trust that. Monk couldn't do it. So Monk would say, nope, can't do that. That's the struggle between a true Bible believer, and somebody who can never make the transition to the spiritual realm. That's the problem. That's that trusting faith that Yahweh's looking for. Will you step out into the void? If you're a parachutist, do you trust that bundle of silk on your back? That's what he's looking for. Do you trust his promises? The continuous thinker will never do that. Can't. They might play at it. They might go through the motions, but they're still going to cling to, that's where legalism comes from. Legalism is the result of continuity thinking. If I do A, B, C, and D, I bind God. God has to do what he promised because I did A, B, C, and D. That's idolism. I've got an idol. I can bargain with it. If I do this to the idol, that happens to the God, et cetera, et cetera. That's what Oswald's already pointed out. This explains the basic fundamental differences in everybody's psychology and psychiatry. Everybody you will ever meet. Are they continuous or transcendent? And just because you're transcendent doesn't mean you're good or of God. A Satanist could be a truly transcendent individual. Why? Because Satan is a spiritual being. He could have made that switch to that transcendent spiritual thinking. But that doesn't make him good. In order to be a good transcendent individual, you have to have acknowledged the capital T truth and bowed to it. Satan won't do that. So you be careful with how you look at people. Don't think that just because they're of the transcendent world, that doesn't necessarily make them an ally. Back to Oswald. Interestingly enough, one possibility that the myth makers consistently neglect is the analysis of human choices and behaviors in the past to see how those might have shaped the present. He'll get to that in section 2 of this book in great detail. Why do they do this? It is a logical outcome of the conviction of continuity. If I am really one with all humans, then I really have no choices of my own. The past doesn't matter. I'm one with all humans, so what I decide to do is irrelevant. He says, and oftentimes life seems to bear that out. We do things for reasons that we do not understand, and we experience the results often seem to have little relationship to what we did or chose to do. Life isn't fair. So we feel that our actions have little bearing on the real outcome of things. Does that not explain most of the woke culture you see today? Comment on the board from Mr. Holt. No one lies to us better than we lie to ourselves. We have a strong desire to believe their lies because it diffuses responsibility. It's no longer our fault that the system is broken. It's their fault. Our ability to continuously absorb being robbed of money, political accountability, and personal liberty is astounding. So how long until the system becomes so brittle that it can no longer absorb these shocks and breaks down? It's already breaking down, Mr. Holt. If you look at our society, the whole Western world, from a sociologist's perspective, we are in the fall of the Roman Empire, of classic civilization would be a better way to put it, because it was Greco-Roman. We're in the fall of modern society. We're going to go into another dark ages if the Messiah doesn't return. We're already on our way. And it's going to be caused by the exact same forces that caused it the first time. Rome didn't fall because of the things your high school history teacher taught you. Rome fell because of one word, Islam. If you doubt me, go read Charlemagne and Muhammad and then read Charlemagne and Muhammad Revisited. You read those two books, you come back to me and tell me you still believe your history teachers. There's been evidence that nobody wanted to acknowledge or present in the past that has now been presented in a very rational way. Even the archaeology supports this argument. Everything we know about Islam and the fall of classic civilization coincides. It happened at the same time, and it happened in the same ways, and it's actually in the Islamic records. So if you want to read Jihad, the history of Jihad, that's a book I have too. He actually documents, where do you find this? You find this here, you find that there. It's all Islamic records. And the classic civilization was ripe for this takeover because it had become very decadent, very advanced, very effeminized. So it wasn't ready to fight the barbaric hordes of Islam. So Islam attacked and destroyed classic civilization and a bulk of Christianity in the Mediterranean basin. Guess what's happening today? The head that was killed has come back to life. Who brought it back to life? The Western world. The prophecy is being played out right before your eyes, boys and girls. It's just you've been taught to look for something different. Who do you think taught you to look for something different? The adversary or Yahweh? Let's keep reading a little bit more here before we go to the break. At least get done with this page. Oswald says, as a result, given that human choices and actions have little bearing on what really happens in our lives in the continuous mindset, how are we to achieve these goals of security, survival, comfort, and pleasure? Or, to put it another way, how can I explain the world in such a way as to maintain it to my greatest advantage, to maintain the status quo? The approach found everywhere is to project present reality onto the ultimate. The only way to explain the particular characteristics of the visible world is to suppose that there is an invisible world of ultimate reality and that it takes the same shape as the visible one. The myth maker thus reasons from the given to the divine, not the divine to the given, not from the maker to the creation, but from the creation back to the maker. But this is only possible if there is a continuity or a correspondence between the visible realms of humanity and the nature and divine realm. If there is a radical discontinuity between this realm and the one that explains it, then we are truly helpless at the mercy of the gods. And this is something that human spirit cannot bear. This is why so many people will reject the offer of the Bible, because there is a discontinuity between this realm and the one in the spiritual realm. And it means that on earth as in heaven doesn't mean the earth is just like heaven or heaven is going to be just like earth. It means we are fallen and we have to do work to make ourselves like the heavenly realm. We have to acknowledge the rule and law of the heavenly realm and of the Creator. And we do not want to do that, both from pride and fear. So the last paragraph before the break. Thus, continuity serves both an intellectual and practical function. If this world and the other world are continuous, then we can affect that other world by what we do here. We are not helpless. We can act out what we want the gods to do, and it will be done. Not because they must do it, but because in our very actions, they are doing it. They and we are one. This oneness is always potentially so, but the performance of certain rituals themselves, expressive of continuity, reinforces this reality. Before we go to the break, just real quick, when you understand what Oswald's telling you here, this is going to explain why they strip naked and scream at you and why they wave dildos at people. It's continuity thinking. This is going to explain so much about human psychology. It's better than Jordan Peterson or Carl Jung. 3 minutes, we'll be back. All right, welcome back. We're going to keep going here. So let me just throw this up and get ourselves going right back at it. I hope this is making sense for y'all. I'm doing my best to explain it. If you've got questions, please post them on the board. Comments too. But if you've got questions or observations, if a firefly clicks in your head all of a sudden, share that too, man, because I want the pieces of the puzzle that you've been given. Oswald continues, reality only relates to the present. For somebody with a continuous mindset, continuous worldview, rather, this works. It says this reasoning from the given to the divine, which can only be done on the basis of assumption of continuity, has a number of implications for the thought patterns involved. First, such concepts as past and future have no real value to the mythmaker. Now, the present, is all that exists, and thus reality only relates to the present. Now, how many times have we seen that in this world? To be sure, the origins of all things are to be found in the acts of the gods in primal time, but that is not yesterday or the day before. Those events are outside of time altogether. It's just some time in the past. It doesn't matter. Furthermore, the idea of the future, when things will not be as they are now, plays no part in the myths. We do not find stories of utopian realms where the sun always shines and there is no war and everyone eats simply by plucking grapes from the vine. Rather, the myths speak of those primeval events that undergird what now is. In them are found conflict and resolution, love and hate, hope and despair, life and death. Now, you would think, well, the communist, he must not be a continuous thinker then, because he's talking about, the communism where everybody works for each other according to their means, according to their needs, and et cetera, et cetera. That's like picking grapes off the vine, Joe. Yes and no. If you truly understand communism, first of all, you understand it's an impossibility, which means that between here and there, somewhere along the line, you're going to get stuck on socialism, which is just the replacing of the feudal tyrants with the socialist tyrants. Government instead of the lords and barons and kings, et cetera, et cetera. So that's continuous thinking. Nothing really changed. All you did was switch the players based on a lie. It's bait and switch. And this is why I absolutely despise Marx. He dreams up something that cannot exist. You'll also find this in most religions that are apostate, meaning they're following man rather than the creator, the one true transcendent creator. Because like with the progressives, we can make heaven on earth. No, you can't. You were told to bring the world into submission, to make it fit and useful, and to construct things so that they're appropriate and they work according to the creator's desire and his will. But you're still not going to make a fallen world like heaven, because you and I cannot remove sin. We can't change human nature. Human nature is fixed. That's a transcendent understanding. Continuous understanding thinks that you can change human nature. Remember the two worldviews that Thomas Sowell talks about, the constrained and unconstrained. Well, a continuous worldview thinker thinks that human nature is unconstrained. They can change it through quote unquote science. The problem is that a continuous worldview thinker can't really do science. Yeah, we'll get to that some other time. But the constrained, that worldview is the transcendent. Man's nature is fixed. We're not the creator. We can't change our nature. So we can't change our sin nature. There's different ways of looking at things, but they all work. They all come down to continuous worldview, transcendent worldview. Back to Oswald. This is the stuff of reality. There is no basis for imagining some other reality. Now is all there is. All we have by which to explain reality. Time has always rolled and it always will. They believe in eternity, but it is going nowhere. And that's another thing. There's no linear progression. It's just cyclical patterns, the seasons, the years, the precession of the ecliptic, et cetera, et cetera. It's just constant repetition of pattern as far back as you can remember. The task is to find a way of ensuring that it does not stop rolling, or that it does not roll in some completely unforeseen way. And by the implication that man can affect this, you're saying that you partake in the creator's role and authority. Well, that doesn't work that way. I know the Bible, the Messiah says he'll share in his inheritance with you, but he said he'll share. He doesn't say he'll give it to you or let you control him. Okay. And if you try to do something outside of his will, you're going to get corrected. And that's not a continuous way of looking at things. That's a transcendent way. So actualization of timeless reality. What does this mean? Okay. This maintenance is accomplished, as mentioned above, through actualization of timeless reality. Suppose the rains do not come when they should in the normal cycle of things. How can we explain this? And even more important, what can we do about it? Reasoning from the given to the divine, we can understand that heaven and earth are male and female. Plant and animal life are the result of divine copulation. For all things in this world that we know have their origins in sexual behavior. Therefore, the thing to do is to get the god and goddess to have sexual relations. If they do, then the rain will fall into the womb of the earth and fertilize it. Crazy, right? You really think so? You're hitting at the heart of what, hey, Charlie, does this Paul, is the firefly of Paul in the hair, cutting of the hair between men and women? Is this starting to ding in your head?
Oh gosh, yeah. I didn't think about it until you said something, but oh yeah, this yeah.
You have to, it doesn't mean that Paul's teaching a continuous worldview. He's teaching the world as he understood it. The reason a man must cut his hair is if he lets it grow long, he becomes less fertile. And the reason a woman should not cut her hair is because if she does, she becomes less fertile. And this is because at the time, they thought that your hair was connected to your virility and your fertility. It's also why a woman was told to cover her hair, because it's a sex organ in their culture. What?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And that's connected to this idea of world thinking. Although if you were to ask Paul if he was still alive and we asked him that, he'd say, no, that's what, he understands the thinking, but that's not a continuous worldview. This is the way Yahweh made us. So be proper about it. Show some humility. Women, cover your hair. Men, don't let it grow long unless you're a Nazarite. Women, don't cut it short. So what he would be saying is, don't confuse the proper order of things. Right. That's what Paul's trying to teach us. Paul's teaching a transcendent worldview.
Transcendent, right? Yep.
Yes. But this is also going to be connected to why they do silly things like shaking dildos at people or stripping naked and screaming at you. The screaming is, you're not going to have sex with me. Therefore, the world's going to end. I'm holding back. I'm not going to allow the cycles to continue. They strip naked to show you who and what they are, and then they're screaming at you to let you know they're hostile, and they won't let you touch them.
You mean Mardi Gras? Oh, I mean, sorry.
No, Mardi Gras is the invitation for you to cross-pollinate and ensure that Tammuz comes back.
Right.
He's,
yeah.
But all of this is connected, folks. This is all connected. Once you study this enough and the connections start forming in your mind, you understanding it, this book is very helpful for explaining this. And I hope we're doing it justice. Anything else before I keep going?
No, I think we're good.
All right, let's keep going. If they do, then the rain will fall into the womb and the earth will be fertilized. How do we do that? By asking them to do so or trusting them to do so? Far from it. We do it for them through ritual enactment. In other words, we force the gods to have sex through ritual enactment. As the worshiper and the priestess have sex together under the appropriate ritual circumstances, the god and the goddesses do so as well, and the rhythms of nature are maintained. This is why prostitution has always been the domain or dominion of the temples. The sexual activity is much too important to the maintenance of existence to leave to the merely mundane. You can't be trusted with it. So we have to have temple prostitutes. And this is also why it feels good. Do it. You can't trust the procreation of humanity and the continuousness of humanity to the marriage bed and to those stupid transcendent Christians. You got to do it through sex whenever you want it, man. Free love and just whatever. And we're going to break up the family. We're going to let the women, government's going to be their daddy and their husband, and government will take care of everything. And at the same time, Moloch's running around saying, kill your baby in the womb. So you got competing ideas, but they're both of the continuous worldview. in the way the humans see it, but it is still transcendent spiritual, interacting with people who refuse to see the spiritual for what it truly is. Oswald continues, but we should not think that this way of ensuring fertility is the only means of doing so. There are other correspondences which may be observed, and they may function just as well to achieve the desired results. So we may think of the death and rebirth of plant life in terms of the death and rebirth of the gods. This is Ishtar and Tammuz, and this is the Easter cycle, and Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday or whatever. That's what we're talking about. That's the death and rebirth. This is also your Christmas tree and your Yule log. That's death and rebirth too, from a different cultural perspective. Indeed, this theme of death and rebirth may be expressed in several different, even mutually contradictory ways in the same culture. This is where you get your dialectic from, where you can hold two contradictory ideas in your head at the same time. The continuous worldview has no problem with that. That's not a problem for them. The idea of logical consistency based on the concept of unity of reality is simply not a part of this way of thinking. So if you have a continuous worldview, logic is not part of your worldview. That's a transcendent thing. Wait till we keep going in this chapter. Is this starting to click for why certain people are certain ways? Oswald says the point is that if the correspondence can be found and if they can be recounted in such a way as to make them effective for achieving the desired result, that is all that's necessary. Blurring of sources and manifestation. This blurring of the one and the many and of the source and manifestation is common to all myths. The Shatapatha Brahman contains a typical expression of this when it says, he is one as he is there, but many as he is in his children here. He's one person there, but he's also many in his children here. So his children are him and he is his children. The Egyptians express a similar concept when they say that Amun-Ra is the one who is hidden from all the gods and yet asserts that he has 1,000 faces. So he's one, but he has 1,000 faces. The Bible talks that way too. In the case of the Egyptians, they mean he's literally 1,000 faces, but in the case of the Bible, it means you have that many different aspects to your personality or character. There are differences in the way they think. One of them thinks very literally and real. The other one, abstractly. Back to Oswald. What both of these are saying is that the ultimate reality can be one and not one at the same time. Full stop right there. This is going to explain so much. That's a contradiction. If you understand logic, I can't say whether or not you're of the creator or you just understand the transcendent world. I don't know. You could be of the enemy because the enemy understands logic. Trust me. But if you understand logic, you are at least looking at the world through a transcendent perspective. You are not a continuity thinker. If you are a continuity thinker, you've got no problem with exist and not exist at the same time. Hello, quantum physicists. That's not reality. That's a contradiction. In logic, we say from a contradiction, all things follow. And this is why you cannot reason with somebody who has a continuous worldview. Because logic has no meaning to them, no purpose. It doesn't mean, it's got no validity. It's got no sway over them. It has no authority over their life. They can easily say it exists and doesn't exist at the exact same time. Same time, same space. That's a logical consequence of their worldview. Is this clicking with y'all? You understanding why I wanted to do this study? To me, this is huge. You're doing philosophy, you're doing apologetics work here, and you're also doing psychology and psychiatry with me. And anthropology. Sociology. We're doing all sorts of stuff here. Oswald says, if the realms of humanity and nature are congruent with the divine realm, then it is impossible to think of there being any exclusive unity in reality. The realm of humanity and nature are irreducibly multiplexed, at least to all appearances, and so the divine realm must be equally multiplex. While it is theoretically possible to conceive of a oneness with the multiplicity, such as a oneness has little bearing on the world that we are seeking to maintain in order. As a result, While oneness remains an abstract possibility, it is the multiplicity that becomes dominant in practice. This fact is seen in the Indian and Egyptian societies, whose theological statements were just cited. The religions of these two societies are among the most polytheistic in the world. The multiplicity of the manifestations is much more significant for manipulating reality than it is theoretical oneness of the source. This is, in other words, if I have many gods, it's easier to manipulate reality through different rituals and practices. Oswald says, the lack of distinction that we are discussing here can be stated in more abstract terms as a denial of the subject-object distinction. So they're going to deny the subject-object. The subject is me, and the object is something apart from me that I can contemplate. All science is based on this distinction. Ding, 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 ding. All science is based on this distinction. If the continuous worldview holder cannot have that distinction in their head, they can't do science. Told you we'd get to this. And this is why science, to the left in our culture, or better yet, to the continuous worldview holder, is magic. That's all it is. That's why trust the science. No, what they're saying is trust the magic. He says, I am not the experiment, and if the experiment does not come out according to my expectations, I do not falsify the report in order to escape being diminished. That is, I do not do so if I am a good scientist. Why not? Because science believes that there is a reality that exists apart from me. The continuous worldview holder does not. The continuous is a subjective mindset. The transcendent is objective. These two mindsets cannot coexist. The continuous has no way of understanding the transcendent. The transcendent can understand the continuous, but will not agree with them. They cannot coexist. Oswald says that reality is so whether I like it or not. And it is ultimately in my best interest to discover what it is so I can relate rightly to it. If you believe in objective reality, you're a transcendent thinker. That's how you're going to see things. It exists whether I like it or not. I should understand it as best I can. But for the myth maker, such a distinction makes no sense. It's nonsense. If there is anything that is discontinuous with me, it is meaningless. If it is truly separate from me, it does not exist for me. I cannot participate in its life, and it cannot participate in mine. Things only have meaning for me as they relate to me, if you're a continuous worldview thinker. It is pointless to make a distinction between me, the subject, and something that is not me. What else is there but me, the subject? Of what importance is anything except as it relates to me? That is the epitome of narcissism. You become your own God. 2 Thessalonians 2, the capital M man of lawlessness, the human being of lawlessness. This is utter lawlessness. The only law that exists is within your own mind. That's what this is. This is depravity. When you sink as far into this continuous worldview thinking as you can go, you become depraved. Oswald continues, when this understanding is projected on the divine, the result is obvious. Deity must be part of me, and I must be part of it. To say that I am not divine, or that the divine is not me, or to say that the deity is not the world, or that the world is not the deity, is to make life uncontrollable and meaningless. As the source, the divine is the subject, but as the manifestation, it is the object. Because of continuity, it must be both at once. To distinguish between the source and manifestation is to make the source unreachable through the manifestation, a circumstance that is highly undesirable. We will develop this through more thought more fully in a later chapter. Folks, this is Gnosticism. He's explaining Gnosticism. Wow, is he explaining Gnosticism without using that language. He continues, this blurring of source and manifestation is what underlies the story of the golden calf. Since Moses was worshiping the invisible one, the source, on the mountain, why should not the people worship one of his visible manifestations as part of the many in the valley? So God could be the invisible creator and the visible created bull at one and the same time. The text shows us that this is how they were thinking when it tells us that Aaron says of the image, behold your Elohim, who brought you forth from Egypt. Behold Yahweh. Aaron and the people did not consider themselves to be doing anything heretical. After all, this is religion as they had observed it in Egypt for years. As the source, Yahweh is one and other than the creation. But as a manifestation, he is many and a part of creation. The myth maker sees no contradiction. But Moses understood that the God who was revealing himself to the Israelites was somehow distinctly other than creation. Thus, no blurring of God and creation would be allowed to exist. To permit it to exist would be to deny the nature of reality as Yahweh was revealing it to his people. Oh, boy, do we need to stop and unpack this. Matter of fact, I'm even going to drop this down. Charlie might be chiming in on this. All right. What did Oswald just say? Something very important. And if I'm a continuous world thinker, I'm going to say, well, yeah, look, you have the invisible Yahweh, the subject, and you have the Messiah, the manifestation. See, he's one and the same. So he's continuous. He's not transcendent. See? That's the Trinity is continuity. Swing and a miss. You have to assume what Yahweh said. He's transcendent. He's outside of creation, outside of time and space. Remember when I told you that he cannot enter time and space? If he does, he becomes continuous. And then he's not Yahweh. So how does he relate or reveal himself to his creation, whether it's in the spiritual realm or the material realm, in the heavens or in the earth? How can he do that? He's going to have to project himself into it without being part of it. He's going to have to manifest as the Holy Spirit or as a human being. And yet, he's neither. That's the mystery of the Trinity. He's not continuous. He's transcendent. He's separate. He's different. And this is why the Messiah spoke as though he was just a human being. But he also said, I'm Yahweh as well. Now, to a continuous pagan mindset, they'd say, oh, yeah, I get that. You're one and the same. You're the object and the subject at once. That is not what the scripture teaches. Now, how can that possibly be? If you're a continuous worldview thinker, you're going to have to find a way to harmonize that for yourself. Because you're going to be, well, it's got to be true. I've got to be able to explain this so that I can control it and so I don't feel unsettled in my mind. If you're a transcendent thinker, you go, well, this is easy. He's a transcendent creator, all-powerful, unmoved mover who exists outside of time and space. And he created time and space. He can do whatever he wants. And ain't no way I'll be able to conceive of how that works unless he opens my mind and helps me see it. That's faith. Is this the ramifications? Charlie, is this making sense, or is this all just garbledygook?
To me, it does, because the thing that helped me the most in explaining this was when you showed me a Mobius loop and then said, okay, Yahweh's here and we're here, and this is how he can see everything at once, and he can just poke his finger into the Mobius loop and there he is. Now he's inside, but he's not inside.
For those who don't know what a Mobius loop is, if you cut a strip of paper and you give it a half twist and tape it together, that's a Mobius loop. You'll cover both sides of the paper and just keep going both sides over and over and over again as you follow that paper. It will let you cover the whole thing. So that's one way of picturing eternity. And since Yahweh is outside of it, he can just enter anywhere he wants to in that timeline. And that's part of what we're trying to get at. And this is part of why we tell you that if you really want me to, you need to cinch your 5-point harness up real tight. I can lose most people in this audience like that.
Yeah.
If I want to. Poor Charlie's been there when I do this.
Yeah.
So,
Joe, you left me back there a couple miles.
So, and I understand that it doesn't help you when I do that. It might be fascinating to some people, but unless you're tracking with me, it doesn't help. But what I'm trying to get at here is something that we need to understand. This is very important. If you're a biblical believer and you're transcendent and you're born again of the spiritual realm, that's a transcendent mindset. Now, if you believe in the demonic spirits and the fallen angels, that's still transcendent. It's just rebellious, unclean, and evil, wicked. But it's still transcendent. So you can understand these things. That's why there are certain people in the world who are in control of all the folks we see, have the continuous mindset. They play them like puppets. They understand logic and reason and science. They do. They're just not clean. They're an enemy to the transcendent creator. But they do understand these things. But the person, the rank and file average person who's a continuous mindset, they may think they're saved and going to heaven. They've said their prayer. They've gotten dunked. They've never made the transitional in their thinking and their understanding. They're still legalistic. They become legalistic or licentious.
Right.
Or licentious. The way is difficult because to be transcendent requires a constant input of energy. We call it obedience. You're not being legalistic. You're not going to earn anything through your obedience, but your obedience is you trying to come in line with what you've suddenly realized is the creator's way of doing things, his intended. You've learned how to be good. And though you'll never be good, he can make you good. But he's taught you how to, what good looks like. And you're supposed to try to conform to that.
Yeah.
Do you have
whereas
something?
someone from the continuous worldview is those that say, "Oh, I know I'm saved. I know I'm going to heaven, and Jesus is my savior. I've accepted him and everything's good."
That requires no energy input.
Right. You have become your own God, saying that I know that this is all done for me because I said so.
Yes.
Whereas somebody that's transcendent would say, I hope I'm going to be saved because, I'm looking to Yahweh and his mercy and such, and I'm a sinful person and I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to be obedient, but at the end of the day, he's the judge and I don't know what the outcome is going to be. That's the big difference. That's the difference. That's how you can really tell. I mean, is someone really born again? If they have that attitude, more likely that's what side they're on. But if they have the other attitude, they might be in trouble.
One of the best signs you're on the right path, don't mean staying there, but you're on the right path, is when you notice that you've done wrong and it bugs you that you're not that you're going to hell, that you've disappointed the Father. And you're upset with yourself and you're like, why do I keep doing this? When that internal battle that shows you've recognized that you're not functioning the way you were designed to function.
You mean Israel?
Yes. That's when you know you're Israel.
Struggling with Elohim. Yeah.
That's when you know, and you'll be constantly questioning, not so much, am I going to go end up in hell? You're going to be like, is the Father going to reject me? Am I letting him down? Am I disappointed? That's when you start thinking of him as your Father and you're worried about disappointing him and not keeping his household rules, and it bugs you when you don't do it. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
If you're not having that struggle, oh boy. And I'm not talking about, well, I missed this. Oh my God, I'm going to hell. When you start thinking all of that, now that's a good sign you're in legalism. You got to know your Father loves you. He's not, as long as you're still trying to do right, he's going to guide you, correct you, nurture you, grow you. I'm not saying this, well, I did everything. Dad owes me now. I did my chores. Dad has to give me my allowance. That's legalism. Dad loves me. I can do whatever I want. He's not going to get rid of me. That's licentiousness. Both of those are continuous worldview thinking.
But you got to be in that kind of middle. You got to be trusting in Yahweh's chesed, but you've also got to try to live his rules. And when you screw up, you got to admit it and repent and try to do better next time. And
all right.
Yeah.
This is where we're going to put a pin in it for today. We'll come back and we'll be talking about, let me see real quick where we left off. We're going to be on the importance of nature symbolism. So that's when we come back. That's where we'll start back up next Thursday, and we'll go from there. I hope this show is valuable to those of you who are joining us. I know it's not going to be one of the most watched, but oh boy, is this one of the most exciting things that I've taught in a while. Exciting to me, because when you start listening and thinking and contemplating this, it explains so much about the different mindsets in the world. And it really does. You get this person and that person and that person and that person. You can go, all of you are continuous worldview thinkers. Bump them into the lump. Okay, that guy seems to be transcendent. Now, is he either good or bad? Is he following capital T truth, or is he using these things to teach himself or to manipulate things for his own purposes? So you got to look at the fruit there. And that's it. That's all there is. It's ice cream and everything else. So we thank you for being here. If you have questions, comments, please email us. In this case, it would be, I got the wrong email address up there. Yeah, you can email either one, but Joe at the road
I
to
just noticed that too. I didn't catch that earlier.
No. I changed it early on, but I have trouble entering the studio now for some reason, and I have to enter it twice just to get in. But anyhow,
we struggle with the two different shows and channels.
Yeah. Joe at theroadtoconcord.com or admin at wewhoarelost.com. You'll get us either way. You can post a comment. If you're in the Signal chat, you just post your question there too. We'll do our best to answer it. We're here to help and to serve. If nothing else, please hit the like buttons. That's your witness that, yeah, this show is helpful to me. I like it. I'm going to be back again or whatever. That's for anybody else who's not part of the regular part of the class that stumbles across it. Those like buttons help them. It does. I don't care about promoting the show anymore. I don't. I'd be advertising it if I wanted to do that. We're not going to do that anymore. I've switched my mindset. It's not elitism. Yahweh will bring those people he wants to be here to this show, and those who aren't supposed to be here will find their way to go somewhere else. It's that simple. It's how I'm seeing it. It's in his hands. So, but if you do like the show, share it. That's fine. That's how you help other people find it. And if it's somebody you know and they ask about me, tell them, Gregory House and Sheldon Cooper had a love child. It's Joe. So, homosexual sex. Don't go there. Don't contemplate that. Anyhow, otherwise, yeah, we got it. We get it. We love you. We thank you for being here. Tomorrow, the next chapter in the Scepter and the Birthright. That's just as exciting. And we will see you then, I hope. If not, I got a Manic Monday stacking up for you already. One that I don't want to do. So those of you who just want political sadomasochism, definitely make sure you're here on Monday. Till the next time we see each other. Bye-bye.